Hello and welcome to another Writer's Showcase, everybody. I am very excited for another one of these. I don't know what we'll do for number 100. I'll have to figure something out. I also need to figure out what exactly we're going to do in terms of numbering milestones and such. But anyway, allow me to bring on my guests first.
Good morning and afternoon to everyone. Sorry if I come off as a bit low energy today. I did not have my coffee.
No worries. I just didn't get much sleep last night. We had a pretty bad storm.
Oh yeah, that too.
It looked pretty cool. Did look pretty cool.
Yeah, I stood up painting up Seraphim last night, so yeah.
Sweet. Well, allow me to bring in our resident commissar.
I am back, babies.
Nice. And of course, since I shouldn't be my dearie, since I am definitely not dearie. But we do have one specific dearie that I believe she is pining for. Let's bring in our friend the Bard.
Here's to the Bard and I'm calling me plum. Here's to the beast and the rest of you scum. The cage is locked in and the town is aflame, and it's ours for the taking, though you get the fame.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
He really is, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Still funny though, I hope.
Yeah. Also, I should probably say it. I should probably start saying "Privet, comrade" to Commissar Carl over there, just to be on theme.
Well, howdy to the people in chat. Hello, Johan. Sup, Becca. Charles Calkins or Kishu. Always a pleasure. Oh dear, what Lovecraftian thing is Tarek? He's revealed himself.
That would literally be my VR headset looking at a wall and the controllers.
Yeah.
That's what he wants you to think.
That just kind of looked like a glowing, it actually looked like screensaver for a second.
You know, I was able to identify them immediately as controllers for VR set because my little brother has some. That spoiled
really?
Little brat.
I gotta replace my headset. I have dead pixels on it, and if you've ever played VR and you have dead pixels, it is so disorienting.
Oh no! You just say that, and you just say that, and I instantly think, yeah, that's so immersion breaking.
Well, it also makes you sick because if the room isn't moving with you and this one black dot is staying, it's so disorienting.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
So I got to piss away $500 to fix that.
Gross.
That sucks. That really sucks.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So, anybody have time constraints? Just so I am aware.
I have to leave at around 1 o'clock.
Okay. How about you go first, then Carl, then Tarek, and then okay, actually, Wasia, then Aspiring Writer, then Carl, then Tarek. And I'll just read Aspiring Writer stuff when he gets on.
Sounds good.
All right, sure.
Question for you, Dunn, real quick. Are you on a time frame?
I have about an hour and 10 minutes. That's why I started a little bit earlier than usual.
1 second.
So 2 hours from now, 2 hours and 10 minutes, I need to hop off. That's my time frame. But this will, I think, this should allow everybody to, like, if it's 20, 25 minutes per person, it'll be perfectly fine.
We
All
can
right.
do that.
Alrighty. Well, all right,
So-
Lucia, go for it.
All right, so I'm going to go and do a quick little recap because it has been a while since I've been on here, and people might have missed out some details. So in the previous chapter I presented, Lucia was traveling through the winter wasteland of the modern Alps, and she basically encounters someone she basically encounters a monstrosity that nearly kills her, but was saved by her twin sister without knowing that was her twin sister. And so she is now currently at Bitterstone, where she is supposed to be. And we will now be taking off from over there. She gasped and nearly jumped out of bed. Lucia reached for her throat, feeling her smooth, uninterrupted skin. Perplexing still was that the pain had vanished, as did the cold of the blizzard. She glanced around, seeing she was in a dimly lit hexhab and sitting on a bed. What happened? She wondered as she checked herself, seeing all the wounds had healed. Dios míos! I'm alive! She grinned. Ahem. Lucia blinked, spotting her out of the corner of her eye. Her savior. She was laying back against the frame of the bed, hidden in the shadows. But as Lucia's eyes adjusted, her heart hastened. She was breathtaking. Her form was slender, thin, and voluptuous all at the same time. Lucia merely had to glance to see the woman was not only more endowed than herself, but of lighter skin. But her attention was drawn to her face. She looked almost exactly like herself, barring the beauty mark on to her lower left of her lip. Her savior held a smirk that was enticing and seductive. Her hair was blacker than night, and her eyes were purple like amethyst gems. Lucia, awestruck, let loose what her heart was saying. Dios mío, eres hermosa. Maria answered, her voice as elegant and seductive as herself. Gracias, hermana. Eres muy bonita también. Hermana, Lucia repeated to herself. She stared at the woman a while longer, scouring her mind. An uncanny familiarity, huh? She reiterated, feeling feeling that same sensation. It finally clicked in her head, her eyebrows jutting up. Her form trembled and quivered. Holy fuck! You were in my dreams! Maria raised an eyebrow, uncertain of where her twin was going with this. No, fuck it, they weren't just dreams. They had to be memories. But you were calling me something. It wasn't Lucia, and it wasn't what you just called me now. It sounded like Rose, and you mean Rosa? Maria filled in the gap in her memory. Rosa staggered, grabbing hold of her hair. Rosa, that's right. That's what you called me. So then, her heart slowed as fragments of her once shattered memory pieced themselves together, painting an image in her head. Her eyes began to fill with water, and soon she wept. Rosa, she repeated to herself, struggling to speak as her breath ran short. That's right. Mama and Papa. They didn't know they were having twins. And I was the second one to come out, and they thought you weren't going to make it. You were pink all over, even your hair. But you did. Hence Rosa Esperanza Luna. She recited her own name. Her eyes tracked back to her sister. Her lungs emptied. Finally, she remembered the name her parents chose for their first child. Maria, she uttered, seeing her nod. Welcome home, sister, Maria replied, a warm smile growing on her face. Rosa's mind flushed. Her heart guided her actions. She rushed up to her, wrapping her arms around her, and hugged Maria tighter than anyone before. She wept, droplets dripping onto Maria's shoulders as she returned the kindness. Heart beating rhythmically, Rosa's chest began to warm, her nerves finally settling. She was home, but it couldn't last. Pandora's box had been opened. Rosa recalling more of her past life, and her heart raced faster. The woman she was hugging now, she was supposed to meet her by order of her commander, the black armored knight from her nightmares, Jaliel. Yet another name came to mind for him, the one she attached to him, a name that sent a dread coursing through her veins. Dejal, it echoed in her head. Icy claws dug into her brain as it all came flooding back. Her life as a child, their lower middle class life, the schooling she received, her troublesome time in high school, and the women who made her experience miserable. Then her life as a young adult and the humiliation and shame that came with it. Until finally, the time she met him, the horror he unleashed, the fate of her family, the burning cities, the charred bodies, the screaming of men, women, and children, their bodies reduced to cinders. She recalled the dozens of wounds she suffered while fighting him, the scarring memory of her wounded twin, the extinction of humanity, the legions, and at the center of it all, Dajal. Rosa? She heard Maria ask as she stared into her sister's eyes, seeing the rising sorrow in them. Rosa removed her arms from around Maria. Her eyes surrendered lifeless and empty. It was all small to her now. Danielle's death, Sapphire's genocide, the redhead's brutal execution, all paled in comparison to the heaven's wrath. You forgot, didn't you? Maria's voice ripped her out of the dark corner of her mind. Rosa sobered up, long enough to see the melancholy on Maria's face. But now you remember it all? Maria asked, seeing the terror in her twin's eyes. Rosa nodded, watching a tear run down Maria's face as it contorted. Her chest hollowed as she stared into Maria's distressed eyes. She saw her grit her teeth together before spitting it out again. Lo cierto, Romana, but you have no idea how much we've missed you, how worried we were. Even the slightest glimmer of hope, and we'd chase it. She paused, catching her breath. Dios míos. Oh, so many good women trying to find you. Rosa blankly stared at her, recalling the fate of one such woman. Maria? Forget it, the Twilight Phoenix dismissed, listening to her heart. I'm just... A tear rolled down Maria's beautiful face as an unmistakable smile emerged. You have no idea how happy I am to see you again, Rosa. We were so worried. Rosa glanced down, seeing Maria gently caress her hands. But here you are, alive and well. Maria let out a sigh, her eyes sealing shut. Finally, she was at ease. Rosa, feeling the warmth from deep in her chest, wiped the tears from Maria's face. Thanks, hermana. I'm glad to see you again, too. Melancholy left Maria's face as a smile emerged. She addressed Rosa again, her voice calm like a gentle breeze. Come on, I'm taking you with me. We're going to meet up with Angela and the others at a base in Anatolia. Rosa's mouth open. Rosa opened her mouth, her mind struck with severe whiplash. Anatolia? No, that's where he wants me to go. But hold on, we're meeting Angela there. Why does he want me to? A knocking erupted the room, ripping Rosa from her thoughts. Maria glanced behind herself, eyes on the front door. God damn it! She cursed. Rosa leaned to her left, but Maria spat out her thoughts before she could utter a word. Completely forgot we're new here. Eyebrows shot up, Rosa voiced her bewilderment. Wait, what? What's going? Maria answered her, keeping her voice down. The guard captain at every base likes to inspect every Dominix who enters their facility. Just hide behind the bed or something, and don't give yourself away. I got this. She got off the bunk and walked up to the door as the incessant knocking continued. Hold on. Won't they notice me? Rosa protested. Don't worry about it, Maria assured her. They won't be around long enough to find you. Rosa, raising an eyebrow, spotted a shimmering in Maria's hair, where the two braids met to make a V shape. Her eyes darted down to her twin's body, seeing she was dressed in black thigh highs, a loincloth, a pair of elbow-reaching gloves, and a band covering the lower half of her chest. Blushing and averting her gaze, Rosa followed Maria's request, sitting behind the bed and out of view of the door. She laid her head back, recalling her twin's choice of words. But wait, they're inspecting us because we're new. But I was at the other base and Rosa's eyebrows shot up, recalling the words of her driver and the mysterious woman who assassinated the captain of Neo Genesis. Rosa peered around the bed, seeing Maria tug at something in her hair. Rosa caught sight of a wild grin growing on Maria's face and a slight tremor in her chest. She smirked, realizing Maria had inadvertently saved her from a fate worse than death. Maria reached for the door and opened it, the captain and two Kevlar-padded men on the other side. She leaned against a frame, toying with a lock of her hair. Maria addressed the man, her voice satin and soothing like silk. Bienvenidos, hijos de la puta? Rosa's eyebrows jumped, her heart skipping a beat. The fuck are you doing calling them that? She watched, beads of sweat forming on her face, anticipating his response, and feeling disarmed when he did. I don't know what you just said, but damn, you sounded hot saying it, the captain replied with a sort of gravelly voice. Gracias, muchachos asquerosos. Maria giggled maliciously. That means thanks, handsome men, by the way. Rosa, looking away, tried to contain her laughter. The captain, oblivious, invited himself in, with Maria stepping aside for him. Ha! You're damn right I'm handsome. The two guards walked in, closing the door behind them. Maria stood at the door, folding her arms under her breasts, drawing the men's attention to them. So, she began with a voice radiating with the confidence of a lady. How may I serve you today, Feo? Rosa wiped the smile off her face, removing her hand from over her mouth. She glanced around the corner. Why did you say it like that? Why did it sound like you were trying to? She examined her twin's posture and the sultry look on her face. Rosa went pale, feeling cold sweats form along her hairline. The captain moved his personal guard out of the way, standing right in Maria's face. You know exactly what I want. Maria raised an eyebrow, then smirked. Oh my, coming to take it. How naughty, she whispered. Rosa's eyebrows shot up. Well, who am I to resist? She whispered, pulling herself in to lock lips with him. Rosa's pupils widened with horror. The guards gave a subdued cheer as their squad captain slipped his hands on her twin's rear. She felt her stomach curl and her body shudder, yet Rosa couldn't look away. She heard her pulse and felt her heart in her chest, watching the captain fondle her twin's chest, not noticing Maria reaching behind. Rosa felt her stomach acids crawl up her throat, her eyes swelling with tears. Inspect us, huh? It clicked in her head, and her lungs emptied. This is what you meant by inspect. What would happen if we refused? Despite the swelling in her eyes, Rosa caught sight of a glimmer, and she squinted. Maria flicked her wrist, landing a dagger into a guard's eye. His screams It disturbed the room and Rosa. The captain glanced back, but the second he did, Maria snapped his neck, turning his head backwards. His body fumbled onto the floor, leaving just the final guard who had his rifle trained on her. Rosa's eyes shot open, yet Maria seemed unfazed. In fact, she was laughing. Dios míos, niño. What do you think you're gonna do with that paint gun? Rosa watched him, seeing his body tremble, sweat forming on his face. What are you doing? He's gonna shoot you. Rosa panicked, every fiber of her being urging her to stand up, but Maria stood there, goading him on. Hijo, soy una phoenix. You won't even leave a scratch with that. In fact, she raised her arms, folding them behind her head. Go ahead. Shoot me. Rosa sprung out from her hiding spot, screaming at the top of her lungs. Maria, what the fuck are you doing? The guard jolted, turning around and pointing his rifle at Rosa instead, getting the hairs on her neck to stick up. I told you to stay hidden, Rosa, Maria yelled, getting the guard's attention. Maria, please don't shoot me now, she commanded. The guard let out a fearful, bloodthirsty cry and unloaded his rifle into Maria with the sound of a thunderclap echoing in the room. Maria's eyes sealed shut as she bit her lower lip. Her chest absorbed the force of the rounds, the bullets deforming and falling to the ground. Rosa felt a crushing force within her ribs, seeing the man desperately unload his weapon until a clicking sound accompanied the shots. Finally, the gun fell silent. The last bullets fired, and Maria's skin didn't so much as bruise. The guard dropped his rifle, whimpering and shivering, trapped alone with her. Maria, like a spider crawling to freshly caught prey, approached the man with a sadistic smirk. Aw, poor Nina's scared. She, br- she brushed her hand against his face, giggling. He was whimpering, yet Rosa could see him reach for his knife and drove it into her abdomen, the blade breaking against her skin. Softly laughing, Maria leaned in her lips next to his ear, placing a hand over his heart. How adorable. Even after all those shots, you thought that would work, she whispered mockingly. Here, let me show you what I can do with one hand. Crunching, tearing, and splattering disturbed Rosa's ears, and her eyes shot open, seeing the man's pulsing heart in Maria's hand before she so callously discarded it. She saw the shock and terror on his face as he collapsed to the floor, falling flat on his belly. He tried crawling to it, reaching for his heart, his skin turning pale as a ghost and life drained from his eyes, all right in front of a shivering Rosa. Her skin crawled, seeing the pool of blood only grow larger. Maria, however, spat on the bodies. Pendejos, she cursed. Rosa's eyes were devoid of life, her chest hollow and empty. She stared at the bodies, their faces frozen with fear and suffering. Rosa felt a flutter in her chest, the urge to vomit, but instead she uttered her feelings. You, you're a m- monster, Rosa whispered as Maria nonchalantly pulled her knife out of one of the guard's craniums and wiped it clean. Yeah, but I'm your monster, she answered back with a perky attitude. Besides, what do you think was going to happen to us? Two half-naked women trapped in alone in a room with three armed men? Sounds like the beginning of a... Maria looked up from the floor into Rosa's face, her thoughts cut off. Rosa's entire form was shaking, her eyes wide with fear, her muscles locked in place. The cocky look melted off her face as fast as ice boiling in water, replaced instead by melancholy. Maria's eyes darted around but never met Rosa's. Her shoulders slouched and her head hung. Seconds turned into minutes as the AC rumbled in the hab until finally Maria sheathed her blade and allowed a sigh. Lo cierto, Rosita, she whispered her apology. But I like killing bastards. Rosa, still shuddering, gulped. No, you don't. I know you. You wouldn't just start doing this out of nowhere. She clenched her fists and fixed her posture, trying to calm her nerves and containing her thoughts. And just now, you couldn't look me in the eyes. You know what you did was wrong. Rosa stood still, watching Maria fix the band to cover her chest. Anyway, it won't be long until the hunters find out what we did over here. We'll need to get going soon, Maria explained. So, I'm gonna hotwire a truck for us and get out of here. Just follow my lead and we won't get caught. Rosa nodded, getting a smile from Maria. All right, let's go. And that is the end of the chapter.
Damn.
That was some of the edgiest shit I've seen since high school.
Yep. Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay. Scale of 1 to 10, good or bad?
I'd say it's pretty good.
I liked it. I really
I
liked
liked it too. I think
Okay.
for me, like there was some word choice occasionally that I thought like could have been worded a little bit better here and there, but I think like the overall structure is good. I'm interested to see what exactly the point of it was like in the future, but it was interesting at least. But it's just like there are a few like word choice things like stomach acid rather than bile, stuff like that. Just kind
Okay.
of felt like a little bit awkward, like at points in terms of the word choice. But I think Tarek had something to say.
Okay.
I was gonna say, you want me to sugarcoat it, or do you want the honest truth?
Honest truth, because that's the only thing that's useful to me.
I'd give this a 4.
Oof.
I would
Okay.
give this maybe a 4. And the reason I say that is because your descriptors are good, but you the whole thing with the sisters and everything, and the way it's turning into a smut film halfway through when you're sometimes being serious, I am getting tonal whiplash here, and this has been a problem consistent with the book, or with what you've been reading so far. And I keep telling you this: you gotta pick. Like, you gotta make it consistent, man, because all of a sudden she starts just sauntering up to this guy, and it doesn't sound like she's trying to sort of. There's no lead up to it, if you get what I mean. There's no build up to it, because I don't get the impression that this is something that's supposed to be there naturally, if you get what I mean. It just happens, and then you have the excessive gore and everything. And I'm not a stickler for violence or anything. I'm just saying, like, it clashes everywhere.
Okay. So,
Yeah, it is kind of hard to tell what's going on in certain times. I mean, what is going on is apparently very exciting, but you don't have that much of a through line.
You don't have those slow moments. I agree with Carl here, and that is very distracting because not everything needs to be a showstopper.
yeah, I mean, that was actually a complaint that somebody else brought forward to me, and so I actually went back through the book and added in a few chapters to slow down the pacing a bit and maybe not make it such a big deal, you know?
I think that basically what they might be saying is that even within the chapters themselves, it's not even like adding chapters. I think that like with this one, I definitely like I'm interested, but I don't have much context. And there's also
that's
kind of
what
like
I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, the problem was that the context was added in with a previous chapter that I added, what I just recently put in. Yeah, it's a mess right now.
Yeah, it seems like
I might actually just discard the entire project altogether.
No,
No,
don't go
no
that
one is
far.
saying to do that. And here's the thing: that is the worst thing you could possibly do, because it's either you make it work or you give up. And the thing is, you don't want to give up all that time and effort wasted. That's not a good thing to do.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm a firm believer in you go back and you rework what the work that you have. You don't just start from scratch. That's usually uh
Yeah.
pretty that's usually not a that's not a very productive option. It's a lot of wasted effort
Mhm.
for
okay.
so
Well,
it's big. Well, kind of like we're giving you some very specific feedback, and kind of like just figure out like, okay, what cut? I think like main like Tark was saying, figure out, okay, what tone do I want to be conveying with this chapter, and then be like as consistent as possible for that chapter, unless you deliberately want to draw the audience's attention with something big. Does that make sense?
yeah. I'm sorry again. I'm kind of out of it today. I didn't
No,
really get a whole lot of hours of sleep. Um,
it's totally
yeah.
fine.
We get it. We get it. We all
Yeah.
have days like that.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, how the hell do I make this character work though in a different? Yeah. Yeah. Becca's got something to say.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Not finished a draft. Yep. Uh, yeah. So, a lot of this world building's gonna have to go out the window then,
It's
because
not it's not the world building, it's the character interactions. That's where you're weak. World
wait.
building's fine.
Okay, so what was weak about the character interaction?
Again, like the fact that the characters are interacting in a way that where you have a tonal whiplash. Like, she just starts sauntering up to this guy and it turns into a bloodbath. Like, I get that might be the reaction she may have, but you've got to lead into that. It turns into a slaughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I guess what was your intention?
the
What
intention was
is
that she was a femme fatale and a seductress. That's literally her whole entire spiel.
You've got to build up into that, like, because we, as far as I know, this character hasn't appeared before, right? Am I right?
Technically, she's already appeared before, but not
was in the first
in. She
chapter,
was
correct?
not. She was in a prologue, and
Yeah,
she
the
was in a
prologue.
few dream sequences, but she was never really focused on.
Yeah. See, you need some build up to that, like before she just starts slaughtering a room.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the whole entire point though is that this is not her behaving in character according to Rosa slash Lucia, because she's never seen this part of her before, and this is like the first time in like a few months that that she's seen her. So there's a whole entire backstory over there behind why she's become the way she's become. But honestly, given this reaction over here, I'm going to be busy over my vacation, trying to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, so I think part of it's just like the characters don't necessarily, it doesn't feel like they're talking like very naturally. It feels very forced. Is that one of the things that you're saying, Tarek?
I wasn't even focusing on the dialogue. I was just focusing on like event to event, if you get what I
Oh,
mean.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I could just go ahead and remove that last part from the chapter or something like that.
I think the last part is fine, but I think that like maybe some bits where she's flirting with with a bunch of guys, and we see it noticing that it's weird, would build up to it a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we can. I guess we can go with something like that.
Yeah, it's just like,
Uh,
and ultimately, it's like we like just build up to it, figure out what exactly like. I think like begin with the end in mind, seems to be the main thing that we're seeing across the board. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You got to
I mean,
know where you're going and how you're going to get there.
Yeah,
Yeah. You can make up some of the intermediate steps as you go along, but you have to have a plan. You got to have a destination in mind.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
So, from what I'm gathering over here, the critique is that it's just kind of jumps out of nowhere that she starts just seducing this guy and then starts murdering everyone.
Mhm.
And that's
I did like the insulting him in Spanish. I think that's a definitely nice little character beat where he just legit doesn't get that she's calling him ugly and a moron.
yeah.
Yeah, that worked.
Yeah, I think that worked well, but it was kind of like, but then like when the slaughter happens, it's like, okay, total bit of a bit like abrupt jump that didn't quite land for some of the panel. It
Yeah.
seems like.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at the same time, I feel like that if she didn't do it, quickly and abruptly, it would like somebody would notice and try to stop her or something.
No, that's what if a good femme fatale can do it with people noticing. Like she does it in such a way that it's very stealthy and very sudden, if you get what I mean. But it still has to have some subtlety to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I was actually trying to hint that there was a knife in her hair the whole time.
I did not get that actually.
Yeah, I missed it.
Yeah, that was what the mention the shimmering and her reaching into the back of her hair was about. I guess I could maybe just highlight that some more, make it more obvious. Also, Balerion was right. There was some Spanish,
Mistakes.
some Spanish mistakes here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that might just be pronunciation. We know we're not privy to what's being how it's actually being written.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
was this helpful? Is my question. Since that's the point of this, is to be able to help you.
Man, I'm going to chat about this some more later because I am at a loss for how can I fix it a bit, like yeah, okay, so the I don't understand the problem with the interactions. I'm gonna have to chat about it some more. I ran this by with Becca the other day, and I wanted to see her thoughts on it. But I guess just yeah. Sorry.
It's fine. Like
We'll
that's
get
kind
there.
of well, it's totally fine. Like ultimately, this is a place where you can like receive blunt feedback, which is why I like bringing Tark on because he's willing to just say, "Hey, doesn't quite work. You might need to fix it up a little bit."
Yeah.
And I guess like in terms of like I think like the progression of events more than like the character interaction, like where kind of things go, like it seems like it just abruptly shifts without like a lot of like time for the audience to kind of like build up and kind of get acclimatized to this. And kind of we don't really see like the person being like the setup stuff, and it's kind of just like, oh, it just kind of abruptly happens, and it just feels weird. I guess it just feels abrupt. So
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, that's what first drafts are for.
yeah,
Oh boy, this wasn't even the first draft.
Oh, well then maybe you should give up.
we kid.
Don't worry, Becca. I had a feeling that you were pretty tired when reading it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Alrighty.
Mhm.
Well, alrighty. So, I think that we'll do Carl, and then we'll do.
Oh, Tarek.
Does she often say "spank me, daddy" or something along those lines?
Who?
Becca.
Well, actually, I did have a question about what do y'all think of Maria's character? Because this is supposed to be her introduction.
She's fine. I don't really get that much personality out of her, other than she's a decent femme fatale. She's a decent assassin. She's like decent.
She's a sociopathic psychopath. That's what I got.
Violent and hot.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
I've got some work to do.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, man. That was my perspective. Yeah, I didn't really get much. Like, it seemed like she just kind of slaloms from like nice big sister attitude to. Sorry. My apologies. Okay, I won't do it again.
What did you say?
I just asked if. Never mind.
Oh,
Never mind.
oh, that I just remembered now. Okay.
All right. I think we should move on now.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So
Go
I'm
for it.
next.
Yeah, I believe so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it has. Okay. Settle down now. It's your own time you're wasting, students. Now, anyways, we're continuing with Shenna's story. Now, if you remember from, I believe, 3 weeks ago when I last came on, she was formally accepted into the magisterium, and she is now going to be getting a tour of the grounds and just generally oriented in her new position. Chapter 6, Roommates. After so long in the darkness, the afternoon sunlight stabbed into Shenna's eyes like so many flaming daggers, even with the trees to shade the walkways. That was the Hall of Ceremonies back there, Magistress Karna explained. Thankfully, Shenna's ears were as keen as ever. Where the conclave gathers to direct the operations of the magisterium and so shape the destiny of the city we serve. But then, I'm sure a clever girl like you would have puzzled that out already. Now then, this way. Shenna squinted through the glare as she followed Magistress Karna along the garden path. Up here is the southwestern house of study, Karna said, indicating a square gray stone building barely visible through the foliage. This is where many of our classes and instruction sessions gather. Your introductory and remedial lessons will be held in this building. As soon as Shenna had caught up with her, the silver-haired woman turned on her heel and strode back in the opposite direction. So Shenna followed her back across the garden to where an identical square gray stone building stood on the opposite side of the grounds. The more advanced courses meet in the southeastern house of study. You shall meet here once you have completed your foundational coursework and study under me. Karna turned left along a broad, straight avenue. Here the trees thinned out, and the paths were much more crowded. Most of the people wore robes of white, gray, or black, the magisterium uniform. But every now and then, a flash of brilliant color would glint through the crowd like a ray of sunshine piercing a clouded sky. That up there, Karna said, pointing at a much larger building just past the crowd, is the Magisterium Library and Municipal Archive. This part of the grounds is open to the general public by appointment, hence the presence of the lay folk. She paired that last comment with a sideways glare at one of the persons not sporting magisterium robes. And which courses gather here? Shenna asked, finally able to fully open her eyes again. It's a library. No courses meet there, Karna said, shaking her head as though it were the most foolish question she'd ever heard. Then what is it for? Shenna asked, awkwardly, suddenly acutely aware of her own ignorance. Why, books, of course, Karna said. Books and the Accra municipal record scrolls. Shenna had to fight to keep her excitement under control. Books? Real, actual books? She'd only ever seen 2 or 3 back in Riverwatch. Well, with reading and writing being such rare skills, there was little purpose to any books beyond the sheer luxury of their presence. But a whole building full of them? And if the Magisterium was really going to teach Shenna how to read, then she would certainly have access to the library. Oh, she couldn't imagine what sorts of secrets were locked away in that wonderful building, just waiting for her to dig them out. And of course, Karna continued towards the massive stone tower that loomed always just at the edge of sight. At the very center of the grounds stands the Moon Spire, the heart of the Magisterium and the wellspring of our greatness. She raised a finger to direct Shenna's gaze up and down its lofty edifice. Do you see those great metal shutters running along the southern face? When the moon shines down over the city, they swing open to harvest its light. Wow, Shenna gaped. You'll see it tonight if you care to watch, Karna said, starting off along a crowded path in front of the spire. It is quite an impressive thing to behold. Tonight? Shenna said, trailing after her mistress. But I thought the full moon was 2 nights ago. Yes. What of it? Isn't it only possible to recharge crystals by the light of a full moon? Karna laughed. What a ridiculous notion. I'll grant you a full moon is the most efficient in terms of magnitude and time of exposure, but besides that, moonlight is moonlight. A good thing, too. Suppose a cloud front or a thunderstorm came along in the night of a full moon. We'd have to wait a whole extra month to refill our reserves. That would not do at all. And the shutters? Shenna glanced up at the row of slats, squinting as the sunlight reflected off their gleaming surface. Is that all moon silver? All of it? Platinum, girl, not moon silver, Karna corrected. You're not a peasant anymore. Learn to speak properly. At the other end of the Magisterium grounds, there was a low, featureless building, almost hidden among the trees and shrubs. This is the entrance to the vaults, Karna said. Below us lie vast storehouses where we store our crystals, food reserves, and other sundry supplies. All of the buildings on the grounds are connected to the underground through a network of tunnels, and there is also access via the water gate beyond the walls in the event of heavy deliveries. From there, they turned north towards a building that could have been the twin of the other 2 buildings in the southeast and southwest corners. Is this another house of study? Shenna asked. These are the administration offices, Karna said. Come inside. We'll get you some proper robes. It was just as dark inside the administration offices as it had been in the Hall of Ceremonies, with the same red flames burning coldly in their braziers. But thankfully they didn't stay too long. The robe storage department lay only just past the entrance. It took barely a minute for an attendant to guess Shenna's size and produce 2 sets of white initiate's robes for her, and barely a minute more for Shenna to slip them on. When she exited the building with her spare robes and old clothes tucked under her arm, Shenna's eyes only just barely smarted from the light. Tucked away in the northwest corner was the last building on the tour. Indeed, this last building was built into the wall itself. As they drew nearer, Shenna began to notice the seductive aroma of freshly baked bread and vegetables slowly melting into a stew. After rounding a final row of hedges, she saw that the entire ground floor of the building was open to the air. A row of columns and arches marking the borders where walls would have served. And between the columns, Shenna could see walls of flatbread cooling on wooden racks, vats of stew bubbling happily away, and dozens of white and gray-clad robed figures sitting at long tables, all consumed with the business of eating. "This is the refectory on the ground floor," Karna said, "and the initiates' dormitories are above." The initiates made a great show of keeping their heads down as Karna strode past the tables toward a spiral stairwell in the far corner where the walls joined. Shenna stopped in front of the bread rack and was about to snatch up a steaming piece of flatbread for herself, but Karna's hand caught her in the crook of the elbow and dragged her along after her. "No dawdling now, girl. We're almost done." More cold red flames burned in the wall sconces inside the stairwell, and in the dark hallways that sprouted from it. The corridors were too narrow here for full braziers, it seemed. Shenna followed Karna up 3 flights to the top of the stairs and down the hallway to the left. Doors lined the wall in between the burning sconces, each one bearing a unique symbol that Shenna didn't quite recognize. Karna stood waiting for her outside the very last doorway before the end of the corridor. "And this," she said, triggering a cascade of natural light as she opened the door, "is your chamber." The room beyond the doorway was about 5 paces square and cut out of the same gray stone as everything else. A bed was tucked into both of the near corners on either side of the door, with a large heavy trunk at the foot of each bed and a desk in each of the far corners. The far wall opened up into a broad arched window which held a simply spectacular view of the rooftops of the buildings beyond. Shenna stepped through the doorway and luxuriated as a soft carpet kissed her bare feet. She'd seen enough of Accra already to know that this was hardly the pinnacle of opulence, but she didn't care. She was a queen, and this was her palace. "Food is available in the refectory for 1 hour at a time at 6 and 10 of the morning and 3 and 7 of the afternoon," Karna said. "Lights go out in the hallway at 8 of the evening and come back on at 5 of the morning." She tossed Shenna a small brass key. "And this is your room key. Try not to lose it." "Thank you so much," Shenna said with a deep bow. "I won't let you down." "See that you don't," Karna nodded. "Your first lesson is tomorrow at 7 of the morning with Magister Parnulf in the southwestern house of study. Don't be late." She turned on her heel and vanished through the doorway, and Shenna was alone once again. Only this time, there was no uncertainty. Shenna carefully set the bundle of her clothes down on the trunk at the foot of her bed, and as soon as her arms was free, she cast herself onto the mattress. The spotless covers wrapped around her as though embracing a long-awaited friend, and Shenna let out a deep, contented sigh. Everything would be simple from here on out. She had everything she needed. A place of her own, steady food, people who believed in her and wanted her to succeed, and of course, her dear little crow companion. Come to think of it, she hadn't seen her crow in some time. She'd been so consumed with absorbing everything from the tour that she had let the creature loose. Would Magistress Karna be disappointed in her? She had specifically told Shenna to keep the crow close, after all. But her worries vanished a moment later, when the soft jingle of a metal chain drew her attention to the window. Her crow was sitting on the stone sill, struggling to hold up a piece of flatbread in its beak. Shenna crossed to the window, took the bread in one hand, and stroked the crow's feathers with the other. She'd seen children from well-off families in Riverwatch toss scraps of bread into the Red River for ducks, wild geese, and other birds, and now a bird was bringing bread to her. Truly, life took people to wonderfully strange places. As Shenna sat on the windowsill, happily munching on her flatbread and gazing out across the rooftops, the crow set itself down beside her and began to peck frustratedly at the chain clasped about its skeletal talon. It had made little progress by the time Shenna finished her flatbread. Crows might be clever, but some puzzles could not be solved with talon and beak alone. Let me get that horrible thing off you, Shenna said, picking up the crow. He had set her free in Riverwatch. It was only proper that she match kindness with kindness. After a few moments of fumbling, the clasp fell away, and the bird soared off, unencumbered. Shenna watched him glide over the tops of the nearby buildings and away into the magnificent cityscape beyond until the distance swallowed him up. And she nearly jumped out of her skin when the sound of the door opening again brought her suddenly back into the present. This time, 2 women entered, carrying a heavy trunk between them. After them came a girl in white initiate's robes. Shenna quickly got down from the sill. Had there been a mix-up of sorts? Was she supposed to go to a different room, after all? Shenna, darling, the girl squealed. Dear me, what a wonderful surprise. Elira? Shenna stared. What's going on here? Why, I'm settling in, of course, Elira said, plopping herself down on the other bed while the 2 other women swiftly and silently transferred bundles of clothes from their trunk and into the other one. It seems we are to be roommates. Roommates? Shenna repeated. Of course, Elira giggled. Whatever did you think the second bed was for, darling? This should be quite a novel experience. I've never had a roommate before. At least, not a true one. Me neither, Shenna said. She hadn't had a lot of things. Hang on. The 2 servant women finished their work and hefted their now empty trunk back out into the hallway. Elira sighed as they left. It's just a shame we can't keep Desindra and Naylene with us. They do such good work. But alas, rules are rules. No resident servants for those living in the dormitories. Well, nothing else for it. We shall simply have to make do without. It'll be like an adventure of sorts. And with that, she hopped off the bed and began rummaging through her newly filled trunk of clothes. Taking a hint, Shenna walked over to her own trunk and placed the bundles of clothes inside, taking great care to keep her freshly folded spare robes apart from the haphazard bundle that was her skirt and wool blouse. She would, at some point, need to learn the local laundry schedule. No doubt the 1 wash per month that most residents of Riverwatch found sufficient would seem absolutely barbaric in Accra. Be a darling and close the curtains now, would you, Shenna? Elira said sweetly. Sorry, draw the what? The curtains, darling, Elira pointed without looking up from her trunk. Draw them closed, would you? We don't want any peepers now, do we? Sure enough, 2 pairs of curtains hung at both ends of the window, the inner one light and translucent, the outer heavy and opaque. A gentle tug revealed that the curtains were wrapped securely around a bar hanging just below the ceiling. Shenna pulled the lighter of the curtains together and made them fast with a trio of clasps on each leading edge. She didn't know what Elira was so worried about anyhow. The buildings across the canal had no windows as far as Shenna could see, at least none that looked out on their southern side towards them, and any doorways and walkways were far too low for any pedestrians to peer into their chamber. But still, the precaution was probably warranted. Right then, Elira said as Shenna turned back into the chamber. She had laid out 2 outfits onto the bed, one a soft green, the other a vibrant blue, and both spectacularly opulent. Elira was considering her 2 options as though stumped by some deep scientific conundrum. I simply cannot decide between the 2. What about you, Shenna? Do you find one of them more flattering than the other? Shenna looked over the dresses and shrugged. You don't have anything in purple, do you? Oh, I cannot abide purple, Elira moaned. I've always found it a dreadfully artless hue, and in any case it disagrees with my complexion most horribly. I suppose I could see it fitting someone like you better, but alas, it is not to my taste. Someone like me? Shenna fought back the urge to demand an explanation from Elira. Maybe it was an honest misunderstanding, or maybe it was a poorly disguised insult. In either case, an argument was no way to begin a new relationship like this. I think Elira raised a finger into the air and brought it down upon the blue. Yes, I do rather fancy the cut of the other one, but color is always the first thing one notices in any ensemble. She slipped the green outfit back into the trunk and began to disrobe, prompting Shenna to turn quickly away to keep from blushing. Oh, don't let me stop you, darling, Elira chirped over the rustle and swish of fabric. Feel free to slip out of your robes and into something more to your liking, just as long as it's not that horrid little peasant costume. I don't actually have any other clothes, Shenna admitted. The sounds of Elira dressing herself stopped at once. Are you serious? She gasped. I can't believe... Why, this simply will not do at all. Shenna felt Elira's hand clamp about her wrist and whirl her about. Elira was still arranging the finishing touches with her free hand as she dragged Shenna towards the door. Come along now, darling. I'll not have it said that I am an ungenerous companion. What's going on? Shenna stammered, barely managing not to trip over her robes. Where are we going? We are going to Taylor's Landing, Elira said firmly, to get you some proper clothes. And that's that.
When did you start writing this? Just to ask.
This I started writing this particular section.
No, the in general, the whole thing.
This. Oh boy, I've had the character kicking around in my head for about 6 months. Just slowly collecting the story beats, gathering them into something cohesive, and I actually started writing about a week before I first shared this thing, the first chapter.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was just curious because like the parallels between my character and yours, they're just becoming uncanny. Like the end result is different, but I guess you could say the same thing about Vin and my characters too.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, I was actually.
Well, I mean, we are dealing with very similar genres, so there's bound to be certain sans affaire tropes.
Well, not only that, but the living situations are also like almost identical because there's only one way to go from the bottom.
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
Oh, no. Yeah, actually, I was actually kind of curious as well. But
I don't know. Is your story also going to end with a communist revolution?
No, hadn't. Well, actually, it could. I could, but no.
I mean, there is a revolution that takes place in my story, and Shenna does have some superficial elements that are similar to Maria's, in the sense that purple eyes, black hair, and paler skin. So yeah.
Well, description and character are different things.
I hope we get a Netflix deal. I would love to do a crossover with this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh my god.
But it was enjoyable. Like that was really well done. I do like the way that came together.
Yeah, I'm glad people remember who Elira was.
Yeah. Fantasy stories are similar. Gasp. She's not wrong.
No, she's not. But again, like when the living situation is both like living on the street or as an orphan, you can only go, you can go to one or two places, and you kind of don't want to go further down.
Yep, I know. Yeah, they're both taking advantage of I don't know, what is it? I guess this world's equivalent of a university tuition deal.
Damn, lucky.
We're both getting our tuition sponsored. And both based on people who picked them off the street.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you only live on the street, where else are they supposed to pick you up from?
Yeah.
I don't know the bar.
Well, I mean...
I don't think I have a bar scene.
Really?
No, I haven't... I mean, there is one conversation I need to work in somewhere. I suppose I could... I don't know. I'd have to look up what would be the setting appropriate situation for that, because they're. I'm not sure that someone in her position would frequent a tavern. It might be a little too disreputable to go over.
Fair enough.
Anyway, I have to actually get off
Okay.
around about now.
Okay, cool.
No worries.
This has been a enlightening stream, to say the very least, because a
Because your
lot.
dreams were crushed?
No, it's more like wow. I actually expected you guys to say that the first half of that chapter was shit, and that the second half was all right, but hey, subverted severely. So
We're like Ryan Johnson. We subverted your expectations.
yes, Tariq, the sociopathic part is gonna have to stay in there because that's literally part of her
That's
character
fine.
arc.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
that's fine. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. Totally.
Yeah,
that's fine.
it's a redemption arc with her. So that's
All
what.
right.
So
Yeah, that totally works. I think like lamb shading a little bit more will probably help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot.
Anyway, I'll hop off.
All right.
Peace out,
see ya.
guys. Sorry. Bye.
See ya.
I wonder if aspiring writer is at all here. I guess I'll just have to read his stuff like right now.
Well,
Right now.
can I pitch something to you real quick? I know we promised aspiring to be on, but if we got people who are actually on, shouldn't they read
Yeah.
first?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about like me reading his stuff and then reading my stuff. That was what I was thinking about. But yeah, Tarek. Yeah, let's go for it, Tarek.
Because like I got a kind of a long one today, but it's important.
Okay.
Like it's
Okay.
the first thing. It's the first training interaction.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I might have to just kind of make it so that like, hey, if you're not able to come on, I don't think I can like.
That's the thing. Like that's unfair to everybody else too.
Yeah, I don't think I can. Like, if you're not like, if you ask, you're gonna have to like be able to come on. If you're not able to, I think that probably it might be a little bit more fair to everybody to say like, no, like if you can't come on, I can't read your stuff. If you can ask somebody to read it for
But you kind of
like,
have to be there too.
Yeah, you got to be there. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Go
So-
for it, Eric. We'll see.
All right. So, as a reminder of what happened last time, she was inducted into Aviana was inducted into the Ravens, and she kind of had a bit of an interaction with her mentor. And her mentor told her, essentially, you're going to be working with me. I'm going to be training you, and we're going to make you into something. And he then said, get a good night's sleep because tomorrow will be the first day of training. So that leads us where we are today. Though the next morning's skies were clear, the cold air did little to help Aviana's sore body. Her constant shivering caused her still healing wounds to throb, making her occasionally groan in pain. She hadn't slept well during the night, as she was constantly interrupted by awakening just to ensure she hadn't overslept. Her body felt heavy and her eyes were struggling to remain open. And when she looked down at the calm flowing waters of the river, she was repulsed at what she saw. She had bags under her eyes, her cheeks were caked with dirt, and her shirt, which hadn't always been the cleanest, had new stains and rips and several new tears. She quickly turned away from the image and instead turned her attention to where the river met the sea. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon as dawn's first light was beginning to greet the world. The street was empty except for the occasional passing guardian and one hungover tramp who kept muttering to himself. As she walked, her thumb gently stroked and occasionally squeezed one of the red apples Cormac had given her the night before. She lifted her hand to her mouth and took a large bite out of the fruit, resulting in a loud, satisfying crunch. She chewed the chunk slowly, savoring every last sugary taste and the sound of the crunch with each bite. This apple was particularly juicy, especially for this time of year, as just eating it made her mouth moist as though she had drunk a full cup of water. The sweet taste taunted her so much that she couldn't resist eating faster, as she would take large bite after large bite, sucking the juice and then swallowing. "You eat like a cow," she heard someone tell her. Aviana turned her head, her mouth still full and her cheeks puffy, as she saw Cormac approaching her, wearing the same green shirt, brown pants, and cloak he had been wearing the night before. Aviana quickly swallowed the food in her mouth, almost choking herself due to one particularly large piece getting stuck in her throat. Why does it matter? No one else is here," Aviana coughed, spitting out bits of unchewed apple. As she looked down at the apple's core, she noticed that she had stripped every bit of flesh. Satisfied with her work, she tossed the core over the side of the bridge into the rivers below, resulting in a quiet splash. It may look like nobody's watching, but there are several places in this area where people could be hiding. You do well to remember that, Cormac scolded. Aviana slowly lowered her head. His words almost felt like physical pain, which had caused all the sweetness from her meal to leave her mind. Yes, sir. I will try to keep that in mind. Good. Now for introductions. My name is Silas Breen. From this day forward, you are going to be my apprentice, Silas said aloud, his focus not on her, but instead something behind her. It's an honor to meet you, sir. My name is Aviana? She replied, trailing off as she turned around to look at whatever Silas was staring at. Yet when she looked behind her, she didn't see anything other than an empty street, as well as the backs to several buildings. Aviana turned back around. Is something the matter, sir? As I said, you never know who could be watching, Silas muttered before turning his full attention back to Aviana. Anyway, as my apprentice, I expect you to follow my instructions to the letter, and to provide me with excellence. In exchange, I will teach you everything you need to know in order to better serve the Chancellor. While under my tutelage, I expect you to act like a functioning member of society. Your actions will no longer just reflect yourself, they are a reflection of me now as well. Do I make myself clear? Aviana looked into the man's blue eyes. Like his voice, they were firm, unflinching. She could feel her own eyes shifting off to the side, trying to look away from his gaze, but everywhere her eyes moved, his followed. Yes, sir, she responded, her body becoming tense and rigid. Good. Now, come along. We best get started on your first lesson, Silas said, turning away from her and walking towards the wards. Iviana hesitated for a moment, her feet refusing to take another step as she looked at the wards, remembering her last trip there. Yet, after a moment of watching Silas get further and further across the bridge, not even looking back to see if she was behind him, she sprinted after him and followed him into the district. Aviana was grateful the route hadn't taken them in the direction of the orphanage. Instead, he had led her to the eastern part of town. Just like the rest of the area, most of the buildings were heavily damaged, or little more than kindling since the siege. However, the area that Silas led her to was a little better off than others. Some of the structures were still standing, with only minor burn and scorch marks, while some had their roofs completely gone or caved in, they still looked fairly stable. Silas led her to a short, long-looking building made of wood, and it had a stone foundation. The only damage she could see to the exterior was large burn and scorch marks, along with some ashened wood. What windows the building had once had were now shuttered by newer-looking timber, blocking any casual onlooker from viewing inside. Aviana followed Silas as he went to the side of the building, which had a large wooden gate connected between the two buildings. Silas opened the gate and ushered Aviana inside, before following and closing it behind him. The gate had led them to an alleyway with a dead end that was wide enough for maybe two people to walk through at the same time. When they walked halfway through the alley, Silas stopped and turned his head towards the gate and then towards the dead end, then looked up at the gap between the buildings. As he scanned the area, Silas knocked on several different planks, each one at a different height. Every knock resulted in a dull thud until the last panel that he had to crouch to reach. Aviana could hear the knock echo as he rapped his knuckles against the panel again. She watched as Silas put his finger into a knot in the wood and pulled it up, causing part of the wall to open like the hatch at the dove's branch. Inside now, quickly, Silas ordered as he used his free hand to push her into the open hole. Aviana bent under the frame and stood back up once she passed through the hole and took a few steps forward. The building was dark and had a musty smell to it, and felt every bit as cold inside as outside. But at least it didn't smell of rotten food and drink like the Black Paw Inn did. Before she had the chance to look at any of the rest of the room, darkness took her vision as Silas closed the door behind them. She felt Silas move her to the side, but when she reached out to grab him, he was already gone. She attempted to listen to his footsteps, but found herself unable to hear anything. Her body shook and shuddered as she attempted to feel her way towards where she thought Silas had gone. Silas? She whimpered out. No, she received no response. Aviana took several deep breaths to calm her pounding heart, yet thoughts continued to plague her mind. This is what she always imagined the abyss to be. Dark, empty, with nothing to touch, feel, hear, or see. She had made another attempt to step forward, only for a sudden pain to shoot down her torso as she bumped into something. Suddenly, she heard the sound of something lightly scraping. A moment later, light appeared, illuminating the room. This sudden light caused Aviana to blink as her eyes adjusted, but once they did, she saw a candle on the north side of the room had been lit. Silas, who was now standing in front of the candle, picked it up and began walking around the room. She watched as he brought the candle to several others, lighting each one, as well as several lanterns. As he continued to light more, the heat started to thaw her body, and the light revealed that the building had only one room, and what she had bumped into while stumbling around was a railing. Just beyond the railing was a large area with a stone floor, where unlit braziers were sitting, along with weapon racks that made it look like an arena. What is this place? She asked as Silas began lighting candelabras outside the arena. As he did, she noticed that there were several wooden benches, no doubt to allow spectators to sit in on fights. This is where we used to train initiates, but we haven't used it since the siege. Now we train elsewhere, Silas responded. Then why aren't we training at the new place? Aviana asked as she ran her hand against the railing, noticing the large amount of dust coming off it and onto her fingers. Because I don't know if we can trust you yet. I may have vouched for you, but I'm still not sure if you can keep a secret. Silas responded as he placed the candle he was using on the floor. I thought I was to be treated no differently than others, Aviana said meekly, praying she didn't misunderstand the Chancellor's words. And you will be, but you have to earn the right to learn our secrets. I can be trusted, I promise. I won't tell anyone of this. I don't have anyone to tell about this. You can promise all you wish. Regardless, you are going to have to prove to me that you can be trusted. You don't have a name to swear on, and as far as most people are concerned, including me for now, your word means nothing. It will be up to you to prove that you can be trusted. Aviana watched as Silas walked over to one of the weapon racks and pulled out a small sword and threw it to her. She barely managed to dodge the weapon as it flew past her before it landed on the ground. Instead of hearing the expected clanging of metal, there was an odd clunking sound as it bounced against the floor. She leaned over and picked up the weapon, finding it a lot lighter than she thought it would be. When she turned around back towards the light, she discovered it was a short sword made out of wood, with the blade about the length of her forearm. Given your poor performance last night, it's quite clear you've never used a blade of any sort. So we are going to start from the basics. Come here and stand on the line, Silas commanded. Aviana slowly walked into the arena and saw a line drawn on the stone floor with what looked to be chalk. She stood in front of it and faced Silas, who was now holding another straight wooden sword with the blade about the size of his arm. Begin, Silas ordered. Excuse me, sir? Aviana questioned. You heard me, begin. Aviana lifted the sword and brought it down as hard as she could in a chopping motion, her head moving with her arm till she was looking at the floor. She felt the blade stop mid-swing, and her arm and body tremble and ache. When she looked up, she saw that her blade had connected with Silas's. The impact had caused the sword to drop out of her hand, and in that moment, Silas's arm came down, knocking his blade against her head. It didn't hurt, but he had hit her just hard enough that she had lost balance and fell face first into the floor. As she groaned, picking herself up, she heard Silas spoke. Never take your eyes off your opponent. Even a momentary distraction could cost you your life. Now get up and try again. Aviana grumbled and picked up her sword, taking her spot at the painted line again. Silas raised his sword, taking a defensive position. Aviana focused solely on Silas's blade as she swung her sword horizontally this time. The swing was weaker than her first, but she bit her lip, trying to suppress the cry of pain from her aching body. When the blades made contact, there was a soft tap. She turned her attention to Silas, who had let out an audible sigh, not even trying to hide the disappointment on his face, before pulling the sword away. Stand still, Silas said quietly before walking over to her. He grabbed her left hand and moved it further back, and nudged the back of her knee, causing it to bend. Then he did the same with the back of her right knee. Aviana felt uncomfortable, and her legs wouldn't stop wobbling. A moment later, she felt Silas position her arm to where her shoulder was tucked into her torso, and her forearm was extended with the blade facing upwards. How does that feel? Aviana grunted. Though the heat of the room had started to loosen her up a bit. She could still feel her wounds aching. If I'm being honest, sir, uncomfortable, Aviana admitted, her arms and legs starting to vibrate in the awkward position. Well, you're going to need to adapt. That is the most basic position for any kind of weapon. Silas knelt down and picked his sword back up and swung at Aviana, surprising her. She bent backwards, and she could have sworn she was about to fall over, but found her left foot keeping her up. The reason this is the most basic position is because it keeps you balanced. You can change from a strong defensive stance to a more aggressive and agile stance, Silas explained as he placed his blade in diagonally. Silas and Aviana straightened her knees slightly and leaned forward to attack with a weak horizontal strike, failing to make contact as Silas had moved at the last second. The attack had caused her to fall onto her right knee, and she bit her cheek, feeling the cut on her leg starting to bleed out again. If you don't keep your knees bent, you're going to throw yourself off balance every time you try to swing. If I were an enemy, you'd be in the perfect position to be struck down, and you wouldn't be able to do anything about it, Silas criticized. Now try again and keep your knees bent. Aviana growled as she pulled herself off the floor, turned to face him, bending her knees and repositioning herself again, while ignoring the throbbing pain of her opening wounds. Also, if you're going to swing like you mean it, Silas said, looking down at her. Aviana said nothing and tightened her grip on the sword's hilt before taking a long step forward and performing a horizontal slice as hard as she could. The stance she had taken hadn't allowed her to throw her entire arm into the swing, and most of the work was done with her forearm and wrist. Yet the strike she had made resulted in a satisfying clack when the two blades met without her dropping the blade. Don't stop, keep going. Aviana pressed forward, putting her weight on her right foot as she swung diagonally against Silas's blade, creating another clacking sound and causing Silas to step back. Aviana continued, every attack echoing through the hall as she pushed forward. After a while, she had Silas against one of the railings around the arena. She had started to swing again when suddenly she felt a pain against her left side. When she looked down, she discovered Silas's blade. She was shocked she hadn't even noticed him swing. Suddenly, she felt a stinging sensation in her side and dropped the sword to the floor and began rubbing the area vigorously with her unwounded hand. Quit whining. That was little more than a glancing blow, Silas said as he stood up straight. You didn't say you were going to hit me back, Aviana whined as the pain began to dissipate. You are attacking me. Why wouldn't you expect me to strike back? Do you think your opponent is going to announce every time they're attacked? They're going to attack. As I told you yesterday, you have to be vigilant and constantly aware of what's going on around you, Silas said as he bent down and picked up Aviana's sword by the hilt and handed it to her. Anyways, this is the perfect opportunity for you to learn how to defend. Aviana took the hilt and gripped it tightly, grinding her teeth audibly, but either Silas didn't hear or more likely ignored it. She bent her knees again, putting her weight onto her left foot, and raised her sword. Silas swung his sword into hers, causing another clack to echo through the hall, and nearly sent her falling onto her back, but her stance kept her upright. After several more swings, she felt her knees give out, and she did fall onto her back. Silas stood over her and pointed his sword at her neck. You never stay in one position while fighting, Silas reprimanded. Aviana's body was throbbing in agony as she got to her feet again, sweat dripping down her forehead and into her eyes. Once she got back into position, a loud growl left her lips, so loud that Silas even raised an eyebrow. All she had heard from the man since they had met was criticism and indifference, and she was growing tired of it. Before she had time to comprehend what she was doing, she felt her right shoulder swinging as hard as she could and her sword slam against his. Yet, despite using all of her strength, Silas's sword didn't even so much as nudge. She could feel all of the color leaving her face as Silas launched his counterattack, so quickly that she almost didn't see it. However, she did feel the resulting pain as the collision had ripped the sword from her hand and flew to the side. She wrapped her wounded hand around her wrist, rubbing it, as Silas pointed his blade at her neck again. You are holding your weapon too tightly. You need to loosen your grip so that you can let go of it easily if need be, Silas stated as he pulled his blade away from her. If that had been a heavier blade or I applied more strength, you might have broken your wrist, and fighting with your offhand is difficult, even for a veteran. Aviana said nothing as she walked over and picked up her blade, her tired muscles and limbs screeching in pain. Yet, the bodily pain was nothing compared to the heavy sensations that she could feel in her heart and spirit. She had been used to scolding and criticism. It was about all she ever heard from Stranger, and it seemed that with Silas that would be no different. I'm sorry, sir. I've never done this before, Aviana said meekly, unable to look at Silas. Don't use inexperience as an excuse not to follow direction, Silas countered. I'm trying my best, Aviana retorted. You haven't even begun to try. Aviana gritted her teeth and felt her lips form a scowl as she refused to look at him, gripping the blade tightly again. Are you giving up already? Silas questioned. Without a word, Aviana turned and ran towards Silas, swinging her blade wildly as though she had gone mad. Her blade swung in all directions, vertically, horizontally, and diagonally. She even tried stabbing him a few times. Yet no matter how fast or strong she swung, Silas's blade was always there to counter hers. Despite this, she had managed to push him back into the railing, and when he had begun to swing back, she raised her blade to defend, but the collisions made it a struggle to stay upright, causing her to begin backstepping. Every strike from Silas caused her to take another step, as though she was walking backwards. After blocking several of Silas's strikes, she had almost lost her balance again, but managed to catch herself just in time to block another attack. As he made another swing, Aviana took another step, only to find herself surrounded by the arena's railing. It was then she realized he hadn't just driven her into the railing, he had literally cornered her. She raised her sword just in time to block another attack, but the force of it had sent the sword flying out of her hand and into the stands. Aviana audibly gulped, sweat from both fear and exhaustion dripping from her brow. She looked at him as he pointed his sword towards her chest, his expression indiscernible. Without thinking, she attempted to kick Silas in the shin as hard as he could. She attempted to kick Silas in the shin as hard as she could. However, her kick was stopped before it ever made contact. When she looked down, she noticed that Silas's left hand had grabbed her foot and was holding it firmly in the air. She whimpered quietly to herself before lifting her head to face Silas, expecting a look of disapproval or anger. Yet, when she looked at him, there was an expression she wasn't expecting. He almost looked as though he was amused, smiling even. He let go of her foot and took several steps back, withdrawing his sword. I must admit, I didn't expect you to fight dirty. I'm impressed, Silas laughed. Aviana's heart skipped a beat at the compliment. It was so rare she received one. And anytime she had received a compliment, it was always backhanded or insincere. Yet Silas sounded genuine, and the small smile on his face confirmed to her that he was. She held on to the pleasant feeling for a few moments before confusion started to set in. Isn't fighting dirty a bad thing? Aviana questioned as she moved away from the corner. Most would chastise you for doing so, and it is considered dishonorable. However, we do not fight for honor. We do not fight for glory. We fight for ourselves and to ensure the survival of Tyrann, Silas explained. We are not guardians, mercenaries, nor soldiers. Thus, we are not bound to the same code of honor. Silas finished and took another short sword from a nearby rack and handed it to Aviana. Now, let us continue. And that's it for this week.
I like little training things like that. It's very, I definitely get a sense of like, Corna? Silas, sorry.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like this is an interesting guy who definitely has a lot of stuff to offer the narrative in terms of like being Aviana's teacher.
Yeah, I'm hearing the montage song playing in the background.
He's special simply because he's kind of one of like the first positive adults she has in her life.
Yeah,
like since everything went to shit. I should.
Yeah, especially I really like that last moment where he catches her foot and honestly says that was legitimately surprising. That was a good moment. that makes me think this guy's more than just a abusive asshole teacher. He's actually got something there.
He has a heart to him, yeah. Like he to be fair, like this is hard to explain, like because the book it doesn't focus on him, but right now he sees her as an investment, and you want your investment to succeed. That's the whole idea. But it's about building that relationship, and already he's kind of seeing like, okay, there's something to her. She has some wit to her.
Yeah, you got to make sure that, hey, I put some money in here. I don't want to I want to make sure that it's not completely unfounded.
Exactly, and that's why Silas is becoming one of my favorite characters. Like, I wrote a scene not too long ago where he just takes her fishing, and then he breaks down what like the kind of skill set you need to fishing, and he's not comparing it to fighting. He's just trying to explain to her, well, when you break anything down, it can sound complicated as all hell.
Yeah.
Or when you just don't break anything down, or just like see it as a skill. So, Eric Wright, nice to see you as ever. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. Any. So it was fairly simple and distinct. I didn't really have that much in the way of like thoughts about it. Do you have any comments or questions for us about what you wanted to get out of it?
I like, as I was reading, I know I was tripping over myself a bit. That's just one, because I'm thirsty, and two, I just want to say though, but like, were you able to visualize that fight? Like, were you able to kind of see what she was doing and how he was responding?
Yeah.
I would say so, yeah.
I mean, something with scenes like this, I find it's not so much you don't put so much of an emphasis on like the strokes, or the sword forms,
Right.
Robert Jordan, loved his sword forms, he really did, but you really have to focus on the personal drama behind the sword fight, what the people are feeling and how it affects them, and that I think you really got across there.
Well, the other thing was too, and I actually, believe it or not, when I was writing this, I did a lot of research into various different sword fighting styles, because I then realized, well, this sort of has to be a tutorial in a way, because she doesn't know the position. She doesn't know anything about this. And then in her having to learn, I kind of had to learn.
Yeah. That's the thing about writing. We do have to do our research.
Indeed-o.
And to avoid falling down the research rabbit hole.
I've done so much.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I read this year, I was telling the guys before the show, I wrote it almost entirely in one sitting while I was waiting in a train station for about 9 hours.
Right.
And I mean, part of it was, just I had nothing to do. But the other thing was I didn't have an internet connection, so I couldn't look up and see, okay, hang on, that thing that I wrote there, was that accurate? Hang on, let me check. And oops, I lost 3 hours on Wikipedia.
Hell, when I was writing that fishing scene, I had to do research on like 13th to 17th century fishing, and then I was getting so much conflicting stuff. Like, they said reels weren't invented until like the 1700s, but then I saw stuff that said no, they were invented in like the 1200s, and I was like, oh, to hell with it, I'm just gonna need some artistic license here.
Oh man. Yeah, I got this whole
minds.
Yeah, there's a whole plot point that I'm adding about. I mentioned it in this video, but it's a subtle thing, that there are no south-facing windows in Accra, and because that way no one can charge their crystals by the light of the full moon. Everyone has to get it through the magisterium, which is how they end up controlling magic. But as I was looking up architecture, it turns out so many like ancient cultures had south-facing windows specifically for climate control purposes, and this is going to completely mess up all of the traditional like ways that architecture would have been. Oh, yeah. Oh my God, see everyone with our wooden wood. Tarek, we were mismentioning that.
Yeah,
your wooden wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't talk today.
Woody Wood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least you're not Tyler Perry, where you make, where you have a character actually say, "I can definitely pound your wood. I just work on this carpentry work all day, all night." Tyler, girl, Tyler Perry, never change your terrible movie making ways.
Well, at least we haven't stumbled over any spoonerisms yet.
Spoonerisms? I don't know what that is.
Oh,
I know Spoonie, but I don't know what spoonerisms are.
No, a spoonerism. A spoonerism. That's a real cunning stunt. It's gonna make you seem like quite a shining wit if you manage to pull those off.
And so what exactly is a spoonerism? I've never
heard of it. Yes. Okay. Seriously now. A spoonerism is where you accidentally switch around a syllable in two different words. So if you've ever accidentally called a flutterby a butterfly, hang on. No, that was wrong.
Butterfly, a flutterby or something.
Yep. Exactly.
Interesting.
And as of course I mentioned, if you can pull off a cunning stunt like that, it makes you seem like quite a shining wit.
Fair enough.
Sweet. I like it.
Or even a smart feller.
Yeah. Alrighty. So.
Okay, now you get them. That took entirely too long. I don't know why I even bother with you people. Oh boy.
Alrighty. But yeah, Spoonie's, Channel Awesome. Days when that wasn't the sinkhole of S Pit and crazy.
Look, last Nostalgia Critic video, he's talking about the meaning of life, Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, and I said, Doug, you are not qualified to cover this.
No, he is definitely not. So, so I actually want to leave it up to the chat to say, like, what type of book would they like me to read? Kind of like name off some like types of scenes or something or other that you'd like me to read.
Well, what are our options? Let's go through those first.
Didn't you say you had something similar to what Wysa was reading? Something cringe?
I do. I technically do. I imagine Count Balerion will run screaming if I say what it is. I could. I'm not going to read Dragon Blast. That's getting published in August. So no. And I've read half of it already, so no. You have had enough previews. If you want it, you got to buy the book. It's relatively cheap. It's only like $5 to $6. Well, depends on the level of cringe. Let me. Well, I can always just. Well, I can definitely do. My apologies, Johan, but you can, if you want to get it, you have to buy it. I'm not going to give into the meme. I've given into the meme enough. I have some bad stuff. Like I have, bad in like semi-quote quotations. But I'll actually read something. Hmm. I'll actually read something from Sea of Man. I don't know if I've read this. It's a little section where this young young crippled girl manages to go into. I think I actually have read that actually. Huh. Da, 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 da. You know what? I'll read Steam Detective. This is one that I haven't read before, and I might want to get it into it again. Uh, so I'll okay. Well, I've got a couple. So I've got Sun Killer, which the plot is kicked off by a brother and sister having a kid. There's also
No. No, I'm doing an incest veto on that.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you feel about teacher-student relationships?
Oh my god.
God, you backed us into a hole, didn't you? You knew we wouldn't accept that incest thing. It's just so you can spring that teacher-student relationship. You are disgusting. Fucking, I'm canceling you. Cancel done. Done is done.
Oh, don't worry. They wait till he's an adult.
Oh, boy.
Oh my god.
So worth it. Excuse me. You're
Yeah, man.
That was so worth it. That was so okay. I'll just read. I'll read Steam Detective. I'll read Steam Detective.
All right.
All right.
Okay, good.
Okay. My name is Jack Devereaux. I'm a steam detective in Severan, so called because we all wear gray coats blended with the steam that seems to cover our city like a perpetual hot fog. Nothing too interesting. Also, our city is the most advanced in developing steam technology. Steam cars, steam empowered manufactories, is that sort of thing. Either way, slightly off topic with the city explanation. I should get started with the real introduction. Okay, well, here we go. I've been on the force for 7 years, graduated early, thanks to my wife helping me quite a bit with my studying. I've been employed as a sting manager along with my partner Howard, but I also investigate crime scenes. I expect you're relatively bored at this point, so let's get to some action. From his vantage inside one of the buildings abutting the alley, Detective Howard Stark watched the meeting intently. Peggy, his favorite shotgun, rested beside him. His partner, Jack Devereaux, waited beside him, pale eyes constantly flicking from person to person. Both groups were dressed differently. The ones who had arrived first were probably the buyers of the stolen goods. They wore gray shirts under black jackets with a white pin on the lapel. The second group, the fencers of said stolen goods, wore completely black suits, not quite as nice as their customers. Large pipes stuck out of the building, steam popping from the metal vents every few minutes. Got a good enough look? Howard asked, picking up Peggy and loading it quietly. The short detective put his hand up. Please, be quiet, Howard. I need to listen. How can you hear that? Howard asked, reaming his ear with a thick finger. It's far too it's too far away for me to hear anything any more than steam hissing. Jack gave him a flat look. Because I don't spend my time at the range shooting loud, massive guns that don't really require any accuracy to score a kill shot. Howard shrugged nonchalantly. Helps me relax, he remarked, stroking his luxuriant mustache absently. Jack rolled his eyes and absently unholstered his pistol. Just wait a few minutes, he said, checking the bullets by touch before holstering it again. He tipped his wide-brimmed hat up. Howard chewed his lip. He was a naturally patient person. This was something he acknowledged and accepted. Still, he still didn't like stakeouts or stings that took too long. He looked up at the sky, hoping to see a speck of white cutting through the permanent cloud of gray steam above covering the city. But he wasn't so lucky. They wouldn't get past this area of town at this time of day anyway. What are they saying? Howard asked, trying to alleviate his boredom. Jack sighed, haggling mostly. Nothing he'd be terribly interested in. Better something not too interesting than nothing at all, Howard remarked, inserting a foam earplug into his large ear. Jack breathed in, looking extremely annoyed, then began reciting what they were saying. He was right. It wasn't terribly interesting. Okay, Howard waved his hand. You can stop. I'm finished listening. Jack fell quiet for a second, watching the steam rise from a vent in the ground. Then his posture shifted. Get ready, they're making the exchange. Howard grinned and picked up his shotgun. Finally, he remarked, adjusting his bowler hat so it didn't fall off and poking his head around the wall to look through the empty window. Jack hefted his Winham lever-action rifle to his shoulder and sighted on the barrel. We don't want to kill the men in the nicer suits, he remarked. The chief wants somebody to tie to the crimes. Howard narrowed his eyes, waiting for the right moment. The buyers moved forward, opening up their case to reveal several small platinum rectangles. Howard raised his eyebrows and whistled softly. Wow, that's more platinum than I've ever seen. You've never seen anything more valuable than an electrum rectangle, Jack remarked, remaining completely still as his eyes shifted from person to person. Neither of you, Howard muttered, stroking his thick mustache. I took him to the Grand Museum one time, Jack said calmly, inserting a pair of cloth wads into his nostrils. Had plenty of platinum. It was fake, of course, but it amounts to the same thing. Howard rolled his eyes as he watched the fences bring a small case and proffer it toward the buyers. Jack's pale eyes narrowed as he shifted his finger to turn the safety off. Ready? He remarked. Set. Howard said quietly as the fence's briefcase opened to reveal a pair of set of documents. Fire! They yelled in unison, firing rapidly into the groups, focusing on the guards rather than leaders. Those guys who had the weapons couldn't have people shooting at them after all. Jack's shooting was precise and accurate, as per the nature of his rifle. While Howard didn't have to worry about accuracy. Peggy was the biggest gun on the force, second only to Eleanor, Chief Hardwick's elephant gun. That thing was capable of leaving a red mist where a person used to be. Peggy didn't leave a mist like Eleanor did after a fire. It did leave bloody craters, though. Several men fell to the ground, dead as doornails, chest cavities exposed. Jack's face contorted at the sight of the blood, but he still methodically fired off round after round. After he'd taken out several lackeys, he fired off a quick shot, crippling the fence leader with an expert shot to the leg. He pushed the lever forward, the spent casing flying out of the gun's chamber, then shoved the bolt forward and shot again. The buyer stumbled and fell, case falling to the ground and spilling its contents. Platinum squares scattered across the alley, but the fence guards were too busy saving their skins while the buyer's lackeys tried to shepherd him toward his automobile. Jack shifted his attention to the car and expertly shot the tires out before they could reach the transport. Several of them tried to pull out weapons, but Howard's shotgun put paid to them before they could get a shot off. Howard felt around for a second pair of shells, knowing that he didn't have too many shots left. Best shoot up the flare, he remarked. I'm almost out of bullets. Jack nodded silently, crippling the guards with precise hip, leg, and arm shots. Just before he crippled the last guard, the man and fired a shot into his employer's head. Jack cursed and shot the man in the head. Howard grabbed the flare gun and fired. A loud bang and a burst of blue light shot into the air. Jack holstered his rifle and hooked a rope onto the window. Come on, Howard. We got some bad guys to handcuff, he remarked, hopping over the windowsill and clambering down the rope. Howard looked the rope over skeptically. Did you intentionally pick out a rope that I wouldn't trust? He asked. Jack shrugged. You don't like any rope, so I decided that I didn't need to be picky when purchasing it. Howard rolled his eyes and turned down toward the stairs. I'll meet you there. I'll get there before you. Jack teased, climbing down the rope. Howard waved a hand dismissively. Go screw yourself. A few minutes later, Howard met Jack in the alleyway, the young man slipping a hand into his pocket and pulling out handcuffs to manacle the criminals together. Howard collected the platinum rectangles, placing them carefully in the case. He dusted his hands off and scratched his beard. Come on, let's see what we risked our lives for. Not really, Billy. Not really, Jack remarked, casually chaining a man to a pipe. We were in control the whole time. The usual strategy worked just fine. Shoot the guys with guns first so they don't shoot at you, then cripple them. Howard shrugged. Sounds better if we shoot them up and down despite a hail of bullets coming our way. Sounding better doesn't pay the bills, Jack remarked, picking up the case and opening it. Huh. He blinked several times as he shifted through the papers. We seem to have stumbled across several complicated designs, but there are a few vehicle plans. He paused, looking slightly stunned. What is it? Howard inquired, glancing over his friend's shoulder. I think it's a chemical formula recipe, Jack remarked slowly, snapping the case closed. Nothing important. Probably some new sort of fuel to replace steam power or an explosive chemical. Howard examined the skinny detective. Do you know anything about the formula, Jack? He asked. The man shook his head quickly, too quickly. Not really, he answered. I just know if it's a chemical formula. Don't know what it does or how it should be used. Howard shrugged. All right, I believe you. Let's wait for the constables to show up before we head back to the precinct. Jack shook his head. Nah, you go. I'll take care of the ports. I know how much you hate minutia. Howard patted his shoulder. Thanks. I owe you. Jack nodded toward his friend as he went over to their automobile. Don't get too drunk, Howard, he called. Don't let your wife keep you up too late. Howard waved back absently as he slid into the right side of the vehicle. Feeling extremely bored, Jack typed out the font blocky and not at all stylish. He rubbed his eyes briefly, then finished the thing up. He took a cup and a small pitcher of ice water, then poured a tiny amount of liquid into the cup. Carefully, he sipped it. It was good. It hadn't been tampered with by a few of the prankster officers. Satisfied, he poured a bit more, then drank it down. His eyes roamed the room casually. The precinct building was not the best looking in the city, nor was it exactly the worst maintained. But it was pretty close to the bottom. Paint was flaking all over the floor. Dry old wood owing clearly in several patches. He noticed a fly buzzing around the room, then flicked a piece of lead toward the creature. The buzzing stopped. Ah, he sighed, leaning back in his hinged chair. Jack checked the clock inside, eyed in relief. It wasn't terribly late. He still had a bit of time. Whistling, he raised at least the typing mechanism around the paper and blew on it gently. Still whistling, Jack stood up and walked over to Chief Hardwick's door. Just before he was about to rap on the door, Hardwick's voice drifted through the door. Devereaux, you can come in. Just following protocol, Chief, Jack remarked, opening the door and pulling a chair to the desk. Chief Leah Hardwick turned her chair around and gave him a raised eyebrow. Since when have you followed protocol to the letter? She asked wryly, swarthy face splitting in a bright white smile. Jack grinned. Whenever I asked to come into your office, Chief, he remarked, I'm not about to get shot out by that monster gun of yours. Hardwick lovingly patted her elephant gun. The massive firearm was just leaning against her desk with an easy excess. Yes, it wouldn't be pleasant. Anyway, Jack continued, placing the report on the desk. Here you are, as requested. Good, Hardwick remarked, quickly pursing the port. Everything seems in order. She pursed her full lips. So, the platinum rectangles scattered near the air vent, I see. Jack did squirm. Sorry about that, he remarked. He remarked casually. I was under a bit of pressure, so I had to make a snap decision. So that's why some of them were missing, Hardwick remarked. Several slots in the briefcase were empty. Must have fallen down the air vent, Jack suggested, shrugging unconcernedly. Hardwick smiled. As you say, Jack, she said quietly. We'll just say that. Jack didn't breathe it out. This little dance was necessary. They've been doing it for several years. She clearly knew what he was doing. As long as he didn't steal excessively from the wrong people and he kept his cool, she didn't see fit to charge him. Covertly, Jack slid a small bag to her. This should help with those repairs in the boiler room, he said quietly. Consider it an anonymous donation. Leah took the bag and pocketed it. Thank you for your contribution, she made. It didn't dismiss emotion. You better go. Julia will be waiting for you. Jack stood up, briefly adjusted his coat, then walked out the room. The bag of platinum chunks clicked in his pocket as he bent down and picked up his backpack. Jack patted it softly. It didn't feel heavy at all. Guilt didn't swarm in his belly. There was no reason for it. Jack didn't see any problem in stealing from mob bosses during stings. That the money wouldn't go anywhere other than the pocket of some political fat cat. Besides, both he and the precinct needed money. His salary wasn't extravagant, but neither was the precinct's allotment from the city's taxes. The walls were flaking paint, the desks and secretarial equipment were bought at discount or salvaged and cobbled together. Worst of all, the steam engine downstairs was often failing, causing power to fluctuate and often turn off for long periods of time, making smoke come out of the vents on really bad days and other countless problems. Jack sighed as he picked up his hat and unlocked his bicycle from the rack. He rolled the bike out the doors and up the street until he got enough momentum to hop on the bike and started pedaling toward the bus station. Jack breathed in and out as he rushed up the hill, calling up the bus schedule. There were 3 bus routes he could use to get home, though if he caught the last one, he would be forced to bike 4 miles to his house rather than going across the streets. Timed it just right, arriving just in time to catch the second route. He clamped his bike under the rack on the back of the bus, then went through the back door and showed his pass to the conductor and lector in the front. Thank you. The woman sounded extremely bored. Seat 4 is open. Jack nodded and went over to the designated seat. Once he was situated, Jack slid his backpack off and put it next to him, keeping his hand on inside one of the straps. He'd lost a couple of backpacks on the bus over the years, and he didn't want to do so again. The loud engine hissed in the back, drowned out the radio in the front, playing several of the latest jazz tunes. Jack drifted slightly as the soothing music played in the background, absently scratching his arms. The clear lumps on his forearms itched often nowadays. He didn't know quite why when the other lumps on his neck, back, and legs were fine, except for rare occasions. The bus stopped directly in front of his house, snapping him out of his doze and forcing him to get out quickly or go far out of his way. He had to backtrack. He rolled the bike up the stairs. Then he was about to open the door. He heard someone swearing and a series of loud smacks. Jack chuckled and cracked open the door. Who are we fighting, dear? He asked. Sodden vermin! Julia yelled. More loud thuds. It sounded like a broom. Jack sighed. What is it this time? Mice or rats? Mice! Julia yelled loudly. More bangs and squeaking noises. Can I come in? Julia paused her banging. Maybe she had a mallet or something. You know what? Get in here, her voice drastically raised in pitch. But don't open the door too wide. I don't want the buggers to get out. Jack slid through the door, then quickly closed it. His wife, Julia, was stalking around the room, a croquet mallet in one hand and a broom in the other. Her dress was pinned up around the knees, so as to make them inaccessible to the tiny vermin she was attempting to kill. Several mice scurried around the room, attempting to escape, only to be shepherded by Julia's broom, then promptly exterminated by the mallet. A few of them were hiding behind the furniture, keeping out of sight. Jack quickly examined the situation, placed his hat on the hanger, pulled out one of his long-barreled peacemaker revolvers, aimed, then unloaded the chamber into the mice. The scuttling vermin splattered across the wall, tiny blood spatters dotting the floorboards between the furniture. Jack swallowed and raised a handkerchief to his nose to block out the smell of blood. Noting his motion, Julia dropped her mallet in the broom, then dashed over to her, wrapping her arms around his neck and kissing him. She retracted her lips, then pecked him again on the lips again. "My hero," she said breathily, too breathily for it to be serious. "You saved me several hours' work. Thank you so much." Jack smiled and pecked his wife on the forehead. "Do I detect playful sarcasm?" "That is a false accusation," she protested teasingly. "You are my hero. One of them. Capricorn is a bit higher on the intellectual scale, so I'm slightly below a dead philosopher in smarts," Jack said wryly, putting his hands on her waist and swaying slightly. Julia put his hands on his arms, massaging the lumps through his shirt as she leaned her head against his shoulder. "I married you, didn't I?" A loud bang on the door destroyed the moment. Jack sighed wistfully and released his wife, who promptly unpinned her skirt, letting it fall to the ground, then turned to the door and called, "Who is it?" "It's Mrs. Stoker's, Julia." A slightly squeaky yet ready reply announced the older woman better than any other introduction. "I thought I heard gunshots, and I was wondering what the noise was about." "It's all right, Mr. Stoker's," Julia explained calmly. "My husband was shooting mice for me." "Did he get them?" the older woman asked, sounding eager. "He did," Julia said, giving Jack a smile. "Good on him," Mrs. Stoker remarked. Jack could almost imagine her nodding enthusiastically. "I'll just start wearing earplugs in case he has to kill more of the little bastards." "Thank you for your understanding," Julia called as the older woman's footsteps faded away. Jack came up behind, and Julia hugged her gently, kissing her cheek and leaning his head against hers. "Now, where were we before we were so rudely interrupted?" Julia leaned backward against him. "You were going to tell me about the sting, I think." "Was I?" Jack chuckled. "I must have forgotten." "Yes, you were," she remarked, patting his forearms. "How did it go?" And I think I'll pause there.
I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of hoping it'd be a parody, like a steampunk parody of like noir.
Yeah.
I genuinely was.
Well,
Yeah.
the world definitely needs more steampunk. That's an aesthetic that needs to get spread around. Says the guy who is currently putting his own steampunk story on hold to write in Fantasyland.
I'm sorry. I just wanted the story to start with like, I knew she was trouble when she walked into the room, wearing those cogs on her eyes for glasses, wearing that black dress and that brown skirt. I gotta tell you, I knew she was trouble with the moment I realized she looked like an out-of-place grandfather clock.
I can already smell the saxophone music and hear the cigarette smoke.
She's
Alrighty.
Wait, hold on. She sounded like cigarette smoke, smelt like cheap whiskey, but more importantly, she tasted like music. Don't ask me how I know that. A gentleman never tells.
Yeah. Yeah. So, non-sicko relationship. Just wait.
Very out of character for you, Dunn.
Yeah, it'll depend. I definitely need to. That actually like smelled of cigarette smoke and knew that I was in love. I think I definitely need to put that into the introduction of when they met. But yeah, yeah, this is actually the teacher-student relationship.
God damn it. God fucking damn it. You son of a bitch, done.
I knew she was trouble when she walked in when I saw her sex offender profile. Thing read like a rap sheet from Wisconsin.
Oh me.
This is the shit we put up with. Don't you have somewhere to be in a few minutes?
I'm a terrible person, yeah. But yes, please write that Terry Consents, please. Okay, well, we will call that good. Any other thoughts aside from that?
One thing actually I did think out the introduction about steam power, steam this, steam that. That kind of made it sound a little tacked on.
Mm.
You know, if you're gonna do a steampunk world, you know, unless this is like a one-off, like a quick thing, you know, if you're really gonna build up a steampunk world, I would, you know, weave the descriptions into the writing, not just a big old info dump right at the front. That's clunky.
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie, I like my idea better.
I don't know. Does your idea have a student-teacher romance in it, or brother-sister having a kid?
I gotta tell you, boys. When I walked into that room, wanted to gouge my eyes out. Saw some things no man was ever meant to see. Now, excuse me while I have a cigarette and a whiskey sandwich.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, it would be cool, and I just thought about this. Lovecraftian steampunk. Like, aesthetically, that'd be kind of neat.
Yeah. Tarek is a wholesome boy. How dare you? Yep. I'm a terrible, terrible person. I'm a bad person, but
Jesus.
That's just how it is. Yeah. What can you do? What can you do? Anyway, any other thoughts, like on the character interactions or whatever, before we close out? Or
It seemed well enough on its own.
all right.
Yep. I think so. Yeah.
Nice. That's good.
All right.
Any feedback, like what could be improved, or any other things you liked?
The only thing that could be improved, and this is my thoughts, it's just your performance, man. Because you have like a detective story. You gotta suck us into that. That is supposed to be read in a certain way, even if it's not noir.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
All right.
All right.
Damn it,
Oh.
Spark! You shut the hell up.
Well,
All right. Let's turn this off before the FCC comes
Yeah.
with a bunch of
Yeah.
knives.
Alrighty. Well, we'll call it good there. We'll see you guys later. Adios.